The CZ-805, or the CZ-805 if you live in the UK, the weapon that so many people were excited for before the launch of Battlefield 4 has kind of fallen by the wayside just a little bit. For those of you who took part in the alpha and the beta, you'll know that this was the starter rifle for the assault class before it got changed to the AK-12. And no wonder people were excited for it, a brand new weapon that hasn't been seen in the Battlefield series before. But what happened? Why did it become lost in the sea of other mediocre weapons out there? Let's take a look at some of its stats and see if we can work it out. And straight off the bat, we're going to take a look at its recoil, because for me, this is probably the main reason why a lot of people might have found it difficult to use and then kind of just threw it on the floor with the rest of the assault rifles that no one else bothers with. It's really unbalanced going from side to side, with it pulling to the right at 0.26 and pulling to the left at 0.06. So you think it's already leaning to the right, and then if you add on top of that it pulls upwards at 0.29, the CZ is really quite bouncy as an assault rifle, and that can make it really tricky to work with at long ranges. Close range stuff shouldn't be too bad though, because your target's a little bit larger in the sights. You shouldn't have a problem hitting them, but one issue you will face in those close quarters battles is the reload times. 2.35 seconds for the short reload and 2.9 seconds for the long reload. This makes close quarters engagements a little bit harder to control in your favour, as the time it takes for you to get back into the fight is extended a little bit more than the players with the better assault rifles in their hands. Rate of fire kind of ties into what I just mentioned about the recoil as well, which sits at a fairly average 700 rounds a minute. That might sound quite fast, but then when you look at weapons like the M416 and the Ace-23, which sit at 750 and 770 rounds a minute, it kind of does start to look like it's on the lower side of things. And that might suggest that you want to use it in longer range battles, but that contradicts the recoil stats that we just talked about. And I found in order to make this thing at least somewhat effective in the ranges that it was intended to work in, is sticking an angled foregrip on there, which reduces your first shot recoil just a little bit and gives you a little bit more control over those shots at longer range. And I found it was near enough essential to burst fire this weapon at those longer ranges, or you would end up just losing complete sight of where you were going. You can start to see why this weapon isn't all that popular. It holds the now standard damage model for assault rifles, with a max damage of 24 inside 8 meters, dropping off to 18 damage at 55 meters. So there's nothing really much to write home about here, other than the fact that the bullet velocity sits at a nice high 620 meters a second. So that minimum 18 damage bullet is going to reach those long range targets fairly quickly, providing you can keep your sights on target. That's really it for the CZ-805. I couldn't really find much more else to talk about. It's been a fairly negative set of stats to look at, and that's kind of reflected in the amount of time that I've actually spent using this weapon. I picked it up as a forgotten weapon to do this video for you guys, and the only things that I'd unlocked for it were for battle packs. I think I'd only used it for about 15 minutes otherwise, and I've had to stick a 100 times XP boost on there to try and get some of the bigger attachments for this weapon to ultimately make it better. And even then, it's not that great of a weapon. And this kind of makes me sad, because it's left us in a situation where, like always, the weapons that seem to be most popular out there in the real world with military forces, like the M416 for an example, are left in-game as the best weapons as well. Sure, with BF4 we had the Ace-23 come in and rise to the top as the best assault rifle that you can unlock and use, but there's nothing that was done further into the game's life cycle to try and rebalance it a little bit. The M416 and the Ace-23 are still the best assault rifles in the game, and there's no way that you can deny that. Developers have the power to balance guns in-game however they like. And a great example of this was the PP2000 back in Bad Company 2, which was like 5 years ago now, but that weapon had a 1,000 round rate of fire, where its real-life counterpart only works between 600 and 800 rounds a minute. So the developers took it upon themselves to do what they wanted to do with it, rather than being dictated by the real-life model. And that's where I think I'd like to see Dice LA go with some of these things. Get rid of those weapons that are always up the top of the leaderboard. Somebody using an M416 or the Ace 23 or whatever you really think are the best weapons in those classes, why can they not be rebalanced to make them not as good and let some of the weapons that barely ever get used, like the CZ-805, why can't they have a shot at the top? But anyway, that was just me moaning, and that's just my general opinion. You might have something completely different, and you might think that the CZ-805 is actually a really good weapon for you. I think it's all subjective. At the end of the day, I don't really like this thing, and that's just because the stats don't lead it to be a weapon that I'd really want to use, and the fact that it doesn't get used by most people led me to think that not many other people liked it either. But if you did like it, or you have a different opinion, then make sure you leave a comment today down below. But as I said, thank you very much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you could leave me a rating, or some people want me to say like now. They don't want me to say rating anymore. They want me to say like, so I'll say that instead. If you could leave me a like, that'd be absolutely fantastic. And don't forget to hit up g2a.com/r/Westy for the latest deals on greatest games. The link's in the description. But until next time, my name is Westy, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.